other work to do. So those are my big takeaways. And anything coming from our regional KW, fabulous classes. So don't miss them.
The next one they have coming is about listings. And I think that's in May. Casey, thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning. We're talking a little bit about Mr. Gene. And so I know you walked away a little bit. I think I got a text message and it just said the words mind blown. So tell me a little bit, real quick, share with the group what your takeaway was from Gene, real quick.
He's just a fabulous instructor and just shoots straight from the hip. Like he's been through a lot. He's been through it, and I don't think he's up there making that stuff up. I think we all think we know our finances and we're doing the right things, and then you go and then they point out something that you're not doing, and you're like, oh, geez, okay, right? So I realized what things I was missing, but also that it might not be such a bad idea to get some leverage, even though I don't want to be a team. Maybe I need to start with an admin and get somebody out there that can do some of these office things for me so I can start making calls, and someone who has a group of people as well. So they have their own database. So I need to bring those people in because then they can talk to those people. I need,
Absolutely.
Contact, so.
Love that one. Love that one. I think her other takeaway was I need to hire a CPA. It was the text that I got. So
no, I have a CPA. I need to set a meeting up with my CPA because I need to make sure we're doing the right things. And since I don't have my taxes back yet, we should probably talk.
Yeah, I hear you. Taxes. I love it. So the big thing is that when we talk about leverage, and then we'll talk into what I promised we would talk about this morning, but when we talk about leverage, right? I mean, Casey's talking about hiring an admin, and how many of you went, well, I can't afford that. I don't even barely have enough closings or haven't even had a closing. You're crazy, girl, right? I don't need that. I'm not ready. And that's okay. Because here's the beauty of it, right? From an admin perspective, there's different types of leverage. And Diane talked about what I consider probably the most important one, even though the MREA and Gene would probably tell you to do it slightly differently, is that I'm a big believer in the transaction coordinator first. And here's why. You don't pay them till you have a closing. And they're super inexpensive. And if I'm pushing a lot of paperwork on a transaction and having to schedule inspections and closings and pre-close walkthroughs and all of those things that the TCs will do for us, that's worth probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours of work, right? And you just don't realize it when you're doing it because it's like little pieces, right? And some of you are better than this than I am. However, I will tell you, uploading documents in Command is not my jam. And I find it the most frustrating thing in the entire world to do. And I'm more than happy to get rid of it, because if I'm paying a transaction coordinator $300 or $400 to take all of that off my plate, I can go out and use those 10 hours to go find more business and get paid a whole lot more higher rate. Okay. So what I love about the TC is they don't get paid if I don't get paid. The other thing is admins do not have to be full-time. You hire that first admin, you might hire them on a project-based business. You might team up with 2 or 3 other people and hire an admin, and maybe you use them 5 hours a week and somebody else uses them 5 hours a week. Maybe you use a college student who's really good at social media. Like, you don't have to go out and hire a 40-hour-a-week employee. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, because for some of you, I was watching you turn white as Casey was talking about hiring admins. So I wanted to go through that. So, all right, who else has got something good to share with me this morning, Miss Mara Orchard?
Good morning.
Hello.
Soccer was canceled, so I'm here.
What got canceled?
Yeah, we
You're
got a new
breaking up really
listing
bad.
yesterday. Oh, soccer was canceled. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just checking outside. It's a whole lot nicer now than it was yesterday.
I think there was
got canceled after we got all soaked and stood out there, and then had to turn
Yeah,
around.
you look miserable on Facebook. So All right. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Margaret Gate. I'm one of the productivity coaches in the Arvada office. And I am super excited that you guys are all here. Deanna, you're from Foothills, right? And Megan, you are one of our newer agents in Arvada, right? I don't think we have met. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got a great diversified crew here this morning. And evidently this very diversified crew wants to learn about home inspections. So Mara, I'm going to come to you and Casey quite a bit because you guys have been through these a little bit. But what is the scariest part of a transaction for a buyer?
The inspection and appraisal.
The inspection and the appraisal. Okay. And what's the scariest part of the inspection from the seller's perspective?
To find out there's something wrong with their house.
There's something wrong with their house. The inspection. I would say that one of the top reasons that transactions fall apart is because of the inspection. And I think part of that happens because we as agents aren't setting expectations correctly with our clients at the beginning. So I want to talk through that. I want to talk through with what a home inspection is and what happens at one. And then we'll get into negotiating the inspection objection and inspection resolution. Does that sound good? A good way to spend a couple hours together this morning?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And I love it when cameras are on because I need your energy this morning, you guys. It's been a rough week and I got a big day. Once I leave here, I will not be home again till midnight. So I need you. I need you all. So home inspection, what happens? Well, usually a third party is hired by the buyer to inspect the home visually, to identify any potential concerns, and here's the big one, to educate the buyer on the home. How many of you have ever bought a home? Let me rephrase it. How many of you have never purchased a home? Okay, right? You've never bought one, Diane? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? Because here's the deal. As the buyer, you want to know that you bought a really good home, right? You want to make sure that there's not a single problem with it anywhere, right? And I promise, if you have other people that are along on the ride with you, AKA parents, they want to make sure you got the absolute most perfect home. You've saved all of this money and you want it to be just the most awesome thing, right? And that's normal. As a seller, we are living in our homes and we have learned to live with some of the nuances of our homes, right? We know that that floor squeaks right there, so I just don't hit the step that particular way. Now I'm speaking from my teenage days of I knew exactly what step would creak in the house and I didn't want to wake mom and dad up when I was late for curfew. Okay. We get used to the fact that to turn the sink off, you have to get it to go just right when you turn off the kitchen sink, right? How many of you have that kitchen sink that if you don't put the handle down just right, it drips? Okay. Exactly, right? Look at those hands go up from my homeowners, right? How many of you have that garage door that doesn't close completely on its own and you got to give it a soft kick, right? We have all of those things and those are all minor ones, right? But we live with it. And yet some of those things could be health and safety related. Okay. So when I'm working with a buyer, I'm going to talk to them about the home inspection. As a matter of fact, it's part of my buyer consultation. And in my buyer consultation, when I'm talking about the inspection, I say, so once we get under contract, one of the very first things we're going to want to do is a home inspection. And what the home inspection does is its goal is to do several things. It's to identify any problems that are not visible. Typically what we're talking about there is radon or checking the sewer line through a sewer scope. The inspector will walk through the house. He'll check the electrical. He'll check the plumbing. He'll look at the roof. He'll look at everything. And the other thing that the inspector will do with you is he'll teach you the house. He will show you how to, where the main water shutoff is. He will show you how to talk to you about the age of the HVAC and the hot water heaters and teach you the maintenance. Because Megan, if you went out and bought a house today, would you know how to do all those things? No, not at all. Mara, you're a homeowner. Do you know how to do all those things? No, right? Like I do know where the water shutoff valve is in my townhouse, right? I just have to move a lot of things in the closet to get to it. But trust me, if I had a water problem, it wouldn't take me long. Okay. But if I wouldn't have had an inspector, I wouldn't have known where it was. Now, there is a possibility, Mr. Buyer, that they're going to identify some things that are going to be of concern. They're also probably going to talk about some things that really are just simple little things to deal with after the fact. When we go to the seller through the inspection objection in the process, we are going to focus on health and safety and major items in the house. So as an example, if they take the drone up or they go up and they take a look at the roof and they identify that maybe there's some shingles missing, right? Or maybe they find a water leak that somebody didn't know about, or maybe they find out that the furnace is emitting a little bit of gas. Those are health and safety related issues, and those we're going to ask the seller to address. What we are not going to do is we are not going to ask the seller to address anything that would be deemed cosmetic or minor. I'll give you an example. We're not going to ask them to caulk the bathtub if the caulk needs some work. And let me tell you a story, Mr. Buyer. A few years ago, I had a seller and we were selling actually their condo down in Hilo. And we had multiple offers come in on this particular condo. We went with one and we got the inspection back. And, you know, they kind of asked for some things that were fairly legit. Maybe they were pushing the envelope. And their final request of my seller was that he would have a licensed plumber caulk the bathtub, because if the caulking wasn't perfectly in place and working properly, water could get behind the tub, which would ultimately cause mold, which would be considered health and safety. Well, my seller lived in Pagosa Springs, and he was a very handy gentleman. And he says, Margaret, I am not paying some plumber $100 to come out and caulk a bathtub that I could do for $1.99. This is unreasonable. So you tell them the only thing I'm going to do is the furnace. Now, the other three things that were on the list were extremely reasonable. Had the buyer not pushed the envelope and made the seller mad, he would have done everything on the list. But because the buyer went too far, the seller says, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And by the way, if they don't like it, tell them I got 2 other offers that are calling us every day wanting to know if we're going to stay together. And that's a true story, you guys, right? My stories become your stories, right? So if you're talking to a buyer, right, tell them the caulking story because it's true. Okay? Setting those expectations. Now, with the seller, those of you that have worked with sellers, and I know Christina had one not too long ago, I'm not doing a doggone thing. They can buy this house as is. It's just fine. I fixed all the things that I knew about. Okay, anybody heard that who's worked with sellers? Okay, here's the reality. Here's how I deal with that, Mr. Seller. In the consultation, Mr. Seller, as part of the process, we can anticipate that the buyer will do a home inspection. This is what the home inspection does, and I go through the same thing that I do with the buyer. Now, we can anticipate getting some kind of what they call an objection, a list from the buyer of things they want to address. Well, I'm not fixing anything. I understand that, Mr. Seller. But let me ask you a question. When was the last time you had your sewer line cleaned? Well, I've never done it. I said, okay. And you don't know what condition your sewer line is in. Is that true? Yes. And I said, well, if you knew that the sewer line had a big crack and it was gushing stuff in the ground because of the crack Would you fix it? Well, of course I would. Well, if in the process the buyer identifies that there's something you didn't know was broken that you believe to be a reasonable repair, wouldn't you not do that? Of course I would. Do you see how I spun from I'm not doing a doggone thing to let's be reasonable here? Okay, you got to do that up front, you guys. If you handle those expectations in your initial consultation, as you work through the process of the contract, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, you can always reference them back to that conversation. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we've set the expectations. Now we go to the inspection. Here's who should be at the inspection. The inspector. If the buyer is going to be there, you, the buyer's agent, needs to be there. Okay, you have a license. You do not want a buyer running around the house unsupervised while the inspector is doing what the inspector does. We're responsible for those homes. If we set up an inspection, now I'm very picky on who my inspectors are. So mine are licensed and bonded, but sometimes your buyer says, well, my dad's going to do the inspection. Well, how well do you know dad? Right? So you want your agent license there. We don't give out the lockbox codes without the permission of the seller. And we want to make sure it's our responsibility that the house is secured. Can you imagine being the buyer's agent who let an inspector in? You left early and the inspector didn't lock the patio door and the house got broke into? Wouldn't feel very good, was it? So you want to be there as the buyer's agent. You want to have your buyer there, at least for the summary portion, and then the inspectors. I use companies that are bonded. So usually the listing agents, if I was working with it, I would say, hey, Casey, I'm using the pillar to post. My buyer's not going to show up until towards the end of the inspection. Are you okay if I give pillar to post the lockbox code? And Casey and her seller get to decide. Casey might say, yeah, I know pillar to post. They're absolutely fine. Just when you leave, Margaret, will you just make sure everything's secure? And I'll say, sure. But if I call up Casey and say, hey, Casey, my buyer's not going to be at the inspection until towards the end. And I'm using this guy. I found him on Craigslist. His name's Charlie Lockhart. Is it okay if I send Charlie over to do the inspection and give him the lockbox code? She's going to go, Charlie, who? Absolutely not. Well, he's a really good friend of mine. I don't care. Margaret, I need you to be there with him. I don't care when your buyers show up. Okay, see the difference? Now, by the way, Charlie Lockhart is bonded, so I would have told her that and we would have been fine. Okay. Hey, Casey, are you okay? Pillar to post and my buyer are both going to be there at the start. I thought I'd show up there the last 20 minutes for the summary. Heck no. It's not the inspector's job to keep an eye on my buyer and everybody else that they bring, because I will tell you, they will bring mom, dad, brother, sibling, best friends, whoever they want, because now they get to show off the house. And you don't know those people.
Do you remember when I had the out of town buyers that came in from North Carolina and I got my friends to sell her house to them? I was there during the inspection, and then we were going to do a radon test and a bunch of stuff, and they were in town and they hadn't seen the house yet. So we scheduled a time to go look at the house while they were doing the radon test and the mitigation. And they have 4 kids. So it was the husband, wife, the 4 kids, and me, and we hung out in the backyard with the chickens while they did the radon, because I told Pam I wasn't going to leave these guys in the house, and we weren't in the house. But it was a difficult thing because she was very particular anyway. So I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to freak out. But I said, don't worry, I'm here. We're going to just hang out in the back.
Yep, absolutely right. So
Stressful. It was stressful.
yeah, well, and you just always want to think about if it was your house, how would you want it handled? Okay, right? Sellers do not belong in the house during the home inspection. No, 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 because sellers can't keep their mouths shut.
What about the
One,
seller's
they're
agent?
gonna follow, huh?
What about the seller's agent?
No. There should be no reason for a seller's agent to be in the house.
Okay,
The buyer's agent is there.
I was just asked that on my last listing, this listing I got in Fort Morgan, they wanted to know if they could be there during the inspection. I had to tell them no, they weren't happy about it, but
Here's why. It's for their best interest, right? Because, okay,
they're gonna pick it apart.
you guys are exactly right. So they're going to get emotional. They're going to get defensive. That's one issue. The other issue is they're going to follow the inspector around and they're going to get loose-lipped. Right? The inspector's going to start fiddling with something, right? Maybe he's checking a water or something, and next thing you know, Mr. Seller is going to say, "Oh yeah, we have this thing happen," and blah blah. Stop.
So what
It's
do you?
not intentional.
Oh, sorry.
It's not intentional, but sometimes a seller can say things that will take things down a really bad path. So I will give you a real example, and it has to do with myself when I sold a house before I had a license, and my daughter was 14 years old. Okay, so the inspector was coming back to the house to check something. Don't remember what. And we had a gas fireplace at the time. And when we bought it, it was a gas fireplace. The people we bought it from converted it back to wood. I have no idea why anybody would do that, but they did. But all the gas pieces were in the crawl space, and so we converted it back to gas. But those of you that have known me for a while know that I am not comfortable around fire in any way, shape, or form. I don't do candles in my house. I don't like anything fire related. I'm scared to death of a house fire. And so they were coming back for just one little thing. And I said, it's fine to go, but my 14-year-old is there. And they said, oh, that'll be fine. Okay. Well, you would have thought it was fine until the inspector asked her a question. Now, shame on the inspector. The inspector says, hey, do you know anything about this fireplace? I can't seem to get the gas to turn on. So what do you think a 14-year-old does? She says, oh, I don't know. My mom never uses it because she's afraid of it. She's afraid it's going to blow up. Which resulted in an inspection objection that said, seller to have a licensed technician come out and confirm that the gas fireplace is in complete and safe working order. Which it was, because the safety Nazi mom would have made sure that it was safe. I just chose not to use it. Do you see what happened there? Mara got it. She's like, oh my God, Andy, right? But she didn't know because that's all she ever heard me say. So no sellers in the home. Okay. You need to set that expectation up front. Okay. Questions? You guys all with me?
How do
Yes,
you,
Megan.
How do you just like say it to the sellers? Like, it's just not like, it's not allowed, or like kind of what's the best way to say it if they are pushing that they want to be there?
I would say, honestly, it's not in your best interest.
Okay.
Right. It's stressful. And it's not because the inspectors are trying to tell anybody that your house is garbage, because we know it's not, but it's stressful. And then I literally will tell them the story of Andy.
It's very emotional. That's another emotional piece that you don't
Yes.
need to worry about, because they're gonna be offended.
Well, inspectors, their job is to nitpick that house and find everything that's wrong with it. And if
Yeah.
it's your house, you're going to take that very personally.
Right. Right. So I talk to them about, you know what, this is just like a showing. The other thing I tell them is this: the inspection is probably the second time the buyers have been in the home. Right. Because even in our current market, right now, find a house, make an offer, right? You don't get to go back and look at it 2 or 3 times before you decide to make an offer. Okay, this is probably this buyer's second time to be in the house. They may be bringing their parents by or their children who may not have been with them. And so we want the house, we want them to visualize themselves back in the house, right? We want them to fall in love with it a second time. And, you know, if you and I are here, just like at a showing, we might hinder that. So, I mean, I think there's an inspection has multiple purposes, right? That's why when I tell my sellers, when we've got a home inspection, that home inspector, that house needs to look as staged on home inspection day and on appraisal day as it did the first day we hit the market. Because I want the buyers to fall in love with the house again. Right? I want the appraiser to fall in love with how beautiful this home is. Because they're human. Some of them may not act like it, but they are, right? And if they walk into a home that's beautiful, you have a better chance of getting your higher value than you do if they walk into a kitchen full of dirty dishes in the sink and dirty pots on the stove and underwear on the bathroom floor. They're human. So that's the other way I explain it, Megan, to the seller. Now, are there extenuating circumstances that may mean a seller has to be there? Yes. Maybe they're handicapped. Maybe they have mobility issues. Maybe they have some health reasons, non-contagious health reasons, but they have health reasons that leaving is difficult. If you have that scenario, then you want to talk to the buyer's agent about it in depth. Make sure they're cool with it. Explain what's going on without giving away any HIPAA rules, right? Whatever your seller's comfortable sharing. And that's when I sit down and have a very long conversation with my seller. You will sit in your chair. You will not say a word. You will, if I have to put a muzzle on you, I will. And you guys will get to know your sellers, right? You'll know who has an opportunity to get loose-lipped. But that should absolutely be the exception, not the norm. Okay. And if you have that as an exception, then as a listing agent, you might be there too. If nothing else, to keep your seller entertained. Good question. Anything else? Oh, I thought Diane was moving to change herself off mute. So, all right. So now the inspection happened, right? What are the typical inspections? There's typically 3 inspections that I see, but your buyer can do whatever inspections they feel are deemed necessary. You typically have a visual home inspection. It's all inclusive. There's different levels depending on your inspector, so make sure you know who your inspectors are. Also make sure, I always have 3 inspectors that I give my buyers as options. Funny, I used to have 3, and in the last year, I've fired all but 1 of them. Actually, no, they're all gone. I've replaced them all.
Who did you fire? Not pillar to post.
Pillar to post is no longer my top. I will say that.
No.
We've had a couple of instances where they claim things had leaks that there weren't. But pillar to post is still good. By the way, I love Matt, the sewer guy from Pillar to Post in the Arvada Pillar to Post, who works for the Lunsford team. He's my favorite sewer guy because he is non-drama.
And from
He is
Iowa.
not a drama llama.
He's from Iowa.
And from Iowa. That's who we used.
I did not know Matt is from Iowa.
He is.
But
I think, yes.
so here's why I love Matt. Okay. So my first couple of transactions, they had a different guy that they subcontracted with, and he was drama llama, and he lost me 2 deals that I had other sewer people review that were not what he claimed. So I went to Pillar to Post and I said, I will not allow this guy, who by the way is no longer a sewer inspector. If you send him to any of my inspections, it'll be the last time I use your company. So they started switching, but then they brought Matt on and I fell in love with Matt. So now I request him. And I will literally, there have been times when Matt's not working the day that we have our scheduled inspection, and we will go back and do a separate sewer scope just so that Matt's there. Because I've never met
whole
anyone
inspection?
so passionate about sewer lines before.
Does he do the whole inspection though? Is it, because he did mine, I think.
No, Matt does. Matt's Mr. Sewer Man only. And then
Okay.
you've got a host of other inspectors at the Lunsford team. So you typically do a visual inspection. You always want to do a sewer scope, you guys. Encourage your people to do sewer scopes because here's the reality. You can't see what's going on down there. And it's expensive if there's a problem.
I have a question and I don't want to keep dragging this on, but the house I have now has 2 septics. One's brand new and the other one's been serviced and cleaned and they have record of that. So I should be good with that. It's up to the buyer at that point, right? Because we already have documentation.
Okay, so with a septic, so let me finish this, then I'll come back to you. Okay.
thank you.
The third inspection that I talk about that's very common right now is radon.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, if you've got a 4th-story condo, you probably don't need to do radon because radon stays low to the ground. But again, I'm not going to stop a buyer from doing it. I'm going to tell them to do their research and understand what they're doing. Okay. Septic systems. If you, and Deanna can probably help us with some of this coming being in the mountains, right? Septic systems, you need to know, Casey, what the septic rules are in the county you're in. Okay, because septic systems, most counties, you might just have gotten lucky because you're in Weld.
No, I'm in
Weld
Morgan.
County is probably the only county in the state of Colorado that does not require a use permit. But if
I'm
you
in
are a
Morgan
listing,
County.
if you are a listing agent, I encourage you to Google septic transfer on real estate. And they will give you the rules of that county that needs to be done. It is very common that a seller is asked in the contract to have a septic system cleaned, what they call pumped, cleaned and pumped within 30 days of closing and inspected, and they go through the process to get the use permit. So you have to know your county rules surrounding the septic system. If you are dealing with septic on your property, please make sure that you are talking to your managing broker, Bob. If you're in my program or me, I think Jody can help as well, Deanna, or you talk to Kevin. So you guys all come to me or Jody first, right? Because septic systems, we've got special language that we want in the contract, and it depends on if you're on the buy side or the sell side of how we want that written. So make sure with a septic, it's common practice that that falls on the seller. If you're dealing with a property with a well, right, the buyer is going to want to include a well test in their inspection process. They're going to want to have that well checked for bacteria. They're going to want that well checked for how much water it's producing over a period of time. So, and that typically in today's environment, that falls on the buyer to do as part of their inspection process. Deanna, did I miss anything based on what you've learned being up in the foothills?
No.
Okay.
When I'm
So
thinking
if-
about the property that we're building, I have both. It's not awesome.
And you're building it, so you just get to be responsible for all of it, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, when you got wells and you've got septic systems, please make sure you're talking to the proper people in your offices, right? In our office, we would start with me and Bob. Okay. Whew, good thing we got through that. Thanks for asking that question. Anything else? Okay, we're 40 minutes in and we haven't even talked about an inspection objection. So we've set the expectations. Hold on, I need a Coke. I'll be right back. Oh, good thing I'm downstairs. The refrigerator's closed.
Actually, that's a good idea. I'll be right back.
Ah, I'm gonna beat you. Oh, hi, Kylie. Oh,
That was a
all
close one.
right. For those of you that have had transactions, did I miss anything critical in just the inspection setting process and the inspection itself?
The
I
only
would've-
thing I say, if you're not gonna have, if the buyers aren't there with you, take really good notes. And I would suggest, you can make comments, but I would just ask questions. I wouldn't.
Yes.
I
Thank
would
you.
not make comments and be like, no, are you serious? I would just let them tell you what's wrong, take notes and ask more questions, because it just drives them to become more of a know-it-all, and we don't have time for that. It's just from
So-
experience.
Yeah, great, Casey. So I did forget that. So you're at the inspection and you're the buyer's agent. So if you have a buyer who says, I don't need to be there, just let the inspector go and I'll read the report. Okay, fine. But here's what I do. Can we at least jump on a Zoom call when the inspector is done? And that way he can walk through the report with you of the big things that he saw. And that way, if you need to see where it is, by him being on Zoom on his phone, he can take you over to and show you in the house what he's talking about. We did that in COVID. During COVID, an inspector could go to the house, but the buyer and the agent could not. So we would have the inspectors would go into the home, and then as agents, we would set up a Zoom call with the inspector and the buyer, and we would go through the summary through technology. If you have a buyer who's like, I don't have time, or I can't do it, or I don't want to do it, at least get them with the inspector using technology. Okay. Here's why. They're going to read the report. The reports sound a whole lot worse than the verbal conversation with the inspector.
Mhm.
Okay. So get that off the table. Thank you, Casey, for helping me remember that. Also, I don't care how smart you are when it comes to the houses. I don't care your personal experience with lead-based paint. I don't care your personal experience with anything. You are not an expert on anything. Now, that doesn't mean that you stand there and as the inspector's talking to your buyer and your buyer gets their eyes start to grow like this and they get that glazed over, what did I just do? They're starting to turn white because they don't understand what the inspector is saying. You absolutely need to be asking clarifying questions, right? Because this is where your knowledge as a realtor, as maybe a former homeowner, a current homeowner, because here's the deal. The inspectors do this how often? At least twice a day, 6 days a week. This is common to them. Megan, you've never bought a house before, right? If I just started spewing, blah, 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 you're not gonna know what I'm talking about, and you're gonna get scared. This is where if I am Megan's agent, will stop Chad or Ralph or Charlie or whoever's doing the inspection and say, well, now, can you explain that a little bit farther? I'm not completely following it. I know that I probably did, but I know doggone good and well Megan didn't. And when I see Megan get scared, isn't it my job to keep the transaction together? Isn't it my job to make sure that Megan makes the best possible decision for Megan? And if she's confused, is she going to make the best decision? Right? And I need Megan to feel comfortable, because when she goes and shows the inspection report to her dad and says, what does this mean? What is a dad going to do? Come on, ladies. He is going to swoop in and protect his little baby girl like there's no tomorrow, right? And he's going to probably blow the deal up over something that's no big deal. Right? So I need Megan to feel comfortable to be able to handle that. Does that make sense? Thank you, Casey, for that. All right. We've had the inspection. I've taken my notes of the things that I heard that I think are typical health and safety things that we should address, because, and I'm going to pick on Megan today, right? Megan might not know that radon at 8.2 is too high, but I heard it. Then we leave the house. I'll say, okay, Megan, let's go have coffee. And we might walk down to Starbucks. Or we might agree to get on the phone in an hour or whenever is appropriate. I do not discuss it in the house. Why?
Cameras and videotaping.
Microphone.
Microphones, ring doorbells. ring doorbells. Okay. It's no different than when you're showing a home as a buyer's agent, right? We don't stand in the house and go, oh my God, I would offer 50,000 more than they're asking. No, they probably just heard that. Don't talk about anything like that when you're inside a house, right? So I'm going to do the same thing with the inspection. Okay. So then I'm sitting down with the buyer. So we're going to go buyer first and then we'll go seller. Fair enough. So I'm going to sit down with the buyer and I'll go, okay, Sherry or Mara, you do look alike. All right, Mara, we got through the inspection. I know you've had some time to think about it. What are the things that you're most concerned about that you heard Chad talk about? And I'm just
Yeah.
going to let her talk,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So,
Now I might
important.
say, okay, Mara, so we had that great conversation with Chad at the house about the inspection. We got the radon results in, at 2.8, where that was looking great. Remember what we talked about back when we started the process? We want to focus on health, safety, and the big material things in the house. Talk to me a little bit after you've thought through Chad's findings. Where are your concerns? I want to know her concerns. I'm not going to tell her mine. I want to know hers. And if she says, well, I made a list with my dad, I'm going to say, okay, let's go through it. Now, she might say, well, the GFCI in the kitchen didn't trip, or maybe it's missing one. Has anyone priced out what it costs to do a GFCI lately?
Like repair it, replace it?
Yeah, how much does it take to convert an outlet from standard to GFCI if there's one missing?
Are
Anybody
you
know?
hiring the electrician or just buying?
Whatever it costs for the electrician to come out,
How much
Right.
is that?
like $100.
175.
It's how much, Deanna?
175.
Yeah. Last time I checked, but that again was using my friend Charlie. It was like 50 to 100 bucks.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's what Mara heard. Oh my God, there's no GFCI. The house is going to burn down because I got an electrical problem and this is going to be thousands of dollars. Okay. So I, as Mara's agent, might say, okay, that's a concern. Do you have any idea what that would cost? Now, I'm not the expert, right? And she'll go, no, I have no idea. And I'll say, well, let's call a couple of electricians and find out. Last time I checked, it was like, I said, I can't remember exactly, but I don't think it's more than a couple $100 max. Did you hear how I was non-emotional? No drama, mamas. No drama, llamas. Okay. But I told her to do what? Call an electrician. Just call an electrician and ask them, hey, if I'm buying a house and one of the things the inspector found was the GFCI something, can you give me a ballpark idea of what that costs normally? They're going to tell you. By the way, some of your inspectors have cost estimates as part of their inspection report. Okay. Google is a beautiful tool, right? You could all go out to Google right now and type in, what does it cost to replace a GFCI? And it's probably going to give you a cost that's not a lot of money. Okay. So Mara's going to start going through her list and she's going to say, well, I was really concerned when he started talking about, the roof was missing a bunch of shingles and there was something missing with some vents up there or something. And I didn't completely understand. And I'd say, you know what, Mara, that's a really good one. Let's ask the seller to have the roof inspected by a roof inspector. Okay, because that's a big material piece to the property, right? That's a reasonable request. The GFCI might be, if there's a ton of little electrical things throughout one, it might be there. But Mara trips off all of her list and we go through it and maybe she's just like, well, I was only worried about the missing shingles. I didn't really care that he said the hot water heater was leaking. And I might help Mara say that that's probably a big thing. And then I will go back to my list of things that I heard. Right. And I'll say, so Mara, do you remember when the inspector was talking about the hot water heater and that it looked really corroded and that it was dripping water? And she'll go, oh, yeah. Said, I would encourage us to have them check into that. Okay. So we have to know what's health and safety and what falls into those categories to help them not forget something. And also help them work their way through some of the things they're seeing. Okay. As your coach, and if you coach with Bria in our office or Jody up in the foothills, we will help you walk your way through those things. Now, please don't be the agent that just sends me a 120-page inspection report and says, help me. No, I'm not going to read your 120-page inspection report for your buyer. Love you all, and right? Usually the inspectors will do a really nice job of summarizing. All right, so I got Mara calmed down. She's okay not putting the GFCI on there, but we definitely want to look at the roof, and we definitely want to deal with the leaking hot water heater and the fact that there's a crack in the septic line, sewer line. So I'm going to complete what's called an inspection objection. Okay, you want to complete this form and get it signed by your buyer and to the listing agent prior to the inspection objection deadline in your contract. You want to tell the seller what you want them to do without making it into a novel. And this is an art, not a science. But I would write up on the inspection objection, I would start with seller to complete the following. Okay, number one, a licensed roofing contractor to inspect the roof, comma, replace the missing shingles, and address the vent that is missing a cap and is not sealed, or whatever it is, right? I'm making part of this up, okay? That's what I want the seller to do, right? I want him to have a licensed roofer come out and inspect the roof, replace the shingles, and do this. Now, the other thing that a lot of people will add to that is, and provide a 5-year certification if you're dealing with an older roof. In some cases, it might be, I want the seller to replace the roof if they found a bunch of hail damage, and that's not uncommon here in Colorado. Okay, the nice part is the sellers now have time to get their homeowners insurance involved. But I'm just going to lay out what I want. Okay, number two, seller to have a license. So licensed plumber to, let's pretend we got a couple things for the plumber. Licensed plumber to complete the following. A, period. Inspect hot water heater as it is nearing end of life and shows signs of corrosion and leaking. Seller to have repaired or replaced to ensure functioning correctly. Something like that. And I write these different every time, you guys. So those of you that are scribbling really fast, I can see your fingers flying. Here's the deal. I don't write them the same every time. Now, what I did do as a new agent, and I continue to do it, as I get really well written little statements from buyer's agents, or I come up with a really great one every once in a while, I will copy it, and I have a library of inspection objection lines. If somebody writes something really awesome, I'm like, well, I want to use that, and I'll just grab it and copy it and keep it on a Word document. Okay. The other thing the plumber's to do is to repair the leak under the kitchen sink. So if I've got one particular type of industry coming in to make the repair, I will say licensed plumber to do the following, and then I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many things they are. Bundle them together. It looks less scary when the seller gets it than if you go licensed plumber to repair link, licensed plumber to do this, licensed plumber to do this. If you start writing them out as line items, they get really scared. But if it's a licensed plumber to do, and then you have an indented few little lines, it's less scary. And I know that I got a couple people on this call that have been down that road, right? And you know what I'm talking about, right? You want to make it look easy on the seller so they don't freak out. Here's the deal. It's when our buyers and sellers freak out that these deals fall apart. One of my favorite quote is, everything is figure outable. Okay. But you got to make it so that it's easier to help figure it out. Okay. And then the last one is certified sewer technician to clean the sewer line and re-inspect for any breaks, repairs to complete as appropriate, or, you know, repairs to ensure functioning correctly, updated video to be provided. If you're ever having, and we're seeing a lot of these lately, it's driving me crazy to the point I'm making my sellers do a scope before we go to the market. We are seeing so many sewer lines that the inspectors, they're so dirty, they can't see the lines. So if you are a buyer's agent and you fall into that, you're going to want to see a video after they clean it to make sure there aren't any breaks. You can use my good buddy Matt at Pillar to Post. He will look at that second video for you at no cost to make sure that it's still good.
That
So
happened to
Matt
me.
goes and he runs his camera and he can't see anything, or maybe sometimes they're so bad he can't get the camera to the main, out in the main street. And that has happened where they're that gross. Okay. If the seller has it clean and provides you another video, Matt will review it for free to verify his eyes that it's good to go. And it usually is, but you just never know, right? Do you guys understand how I'm writing those inspection objections? Who's going to do it? Who? The who is so important. Do you want the seller saying he cleaned the sewer line by he threw some Drano down there? Probably not, right? Do you want the seller to go up and put the shingles on the roof? Probably not. So you got to be very clear as a buyer's agent what you want. Who's going to do it? What are they going to do? And how are you going to know? Okay. It's easy. It's not the full who, what, where, when, why. It's just who and what. Okay. The biggest decision you have to make as a buyer's agent is, do I include or do I exclude the actual inspection report? You guys, it's a strategy. If I can isolate my 2 or 3 things and there really isn't anything else in the inspection report, I'm probably, as a professional courtesy, not going to send the full inspection report over to them. I'm probably just going to do a snipping tool or something and just show them the pieces of the inspection report I want addressed. If my buyer is only asking for 3 things and there is a laundry list of things in that inspection report, I want them to see, look, we hit the hot water heater is about to fail. We got a roof with missing shingles and you got a blocked sewer line. We didn't ask for the GFCI. We didn't ask for the furnace to be cleaned. We didn't ask for all of these other little things. My client's going to take that on after the fact. I may want them to know that so I get what I want. It's a strategy. If you're not sure what you want to do, talk it through with your coach. Okay. And your buyer, of course. Here's why I don't automatically send the inspection report. There's an inspection company out there who every inspection report I've ever seen from them is 120 pages. If you attach that and send that into with an inspection objection to a seller, what is the seller going to want to do with that inspection report? They're going to read every 128 pages. And they're going to get madder and madder and madder and madder. I had it happen. My seller was so mad, he wouldn't even talk about an inspection resolution until the day it was due. And the buyer was very, 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 very reasonable in what they were asking. But my seller's reaction was, well, they're just buying an old house. Don't they know this house was built in 1960? Like, there's going to be problems. It's not going to, like, he just got mad. Okay. So you got to be careful, you guys, right? As a buyer's agent, when you're dealing with that strategy, you got to be prepared for what's the other side going to react to. Right. Typically, I don't include the inspection objection. I don't include the inspection reports in my objections. I give them the pieces I want addressed, and that's it. Questions, thoughts for those of you that have been down this rodeo? on what I just said? Well, I know you're not all asleep because I can still see all your faces and your eyes are open. So, and Diane's busy running her quilting machine while she's here.
Hey, I'm dual tasking.
I love it.
But yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense. I trying to keep everyone on a nice level plane of sanity is probably much easier done with just a few snippets rather than 120 pages of boy, your house really stinks.
Exactly.
I had that
Exactly.
experience with my younger buyers that are sellers that were in Westminster, and they wanted a sewer scope. So we did a sewer scope, and the company that I've been using, who I thought was good, came back and told my seller why they were there, that there were major damage to the sewer line and it would require $10,000 to have the sewer replaced. These guys are in their 30s getting a separation, and the phone call and text just about put me in the ground. The panic, the oh my God, the $10,000, like,
Right.
but I was lucky to ask Bob, and I got another guy to go out there and do some sewer stuff, and they were supposed to clean it too, and they did not get everything out. There was no damage to that pipe. There was one root in there. And it cost me $375 to have that done, but I paid for that to ease their mind because I just couldn't imagine that needed $10,000 worth of a sewer line.
So that's why it's super important that who does your scope, whoever does your sewer scope does not replace and repair sewer lines.
Yeah, keep them out of the whole thing.
Yeah, you don't want the inspector to be a repairman, right? Because, and a lot of them are, right? Like you go to Roto-Rooter and some of those places, they do it all, but they have a vested interest, right? A sewer scope's $125. You don't know, Maria, what a broken sewer line looks like or not. And if you've ever watched a sewer scope, I can't do it. They make me seasick. And Matt always laughs about that. I'm like, I'm not watching that. You're gonna make me sick. But you don't know, and your homeowner doesn't know, right? We all can tell if there's a leaky faucet. We're all pretty smart. Like if we plug something into the electrical outlet and it sparks, we can see that. We can understand that. Sewer lines we can't see. So that's why you got to make sure you have good people. Make sure you have one or two really good sewer repair people in your portfolio of vendors. Ask people in your office, talk to people, right? Because I will tell you, my guy, the one I use now, I got because I was on the sell side. He helped the buyer side. And I was so impressed with how he handled my seller, who was an older gentleman, and his cost was 30% less than every other quote we got. And he makes realtors his priority, right? When I can find vendors who their only form of advertising is realtor and insurance company referrals, I've got somebody I want to work with. Right? And that's true in roofing, that's true in sewer, because the costs can vary so much. And it's just crazy. Okay. What else do you want to know if you're on the buy side writing an objection?
I have a question about the seller's property disclosure. And just how do you review that? How do you review that with the buyer and maybe take that to the inspection, and then how do you advise your sellers as well?
Okay, I like that. So I'll go there and then I'm gonna come back to what I wanted to say. Somebody help me, just say this word to me, concessions. So seller's property disclosure, as soon as I get it, my transaction coordinator sends it to my buyer. And I will tell my buyer, here's a copy of the seller's property disclosure. Please make sure you review it Do you have any questions? Let's ask some questions before you sign it. Yes, having the seller's property disclosure with you for the inspector is a good thing. Yes. I think that's pretty much it, right? Good luck, Casey. Go find some clients today. Yes, the seller's property disclosure. Here's the thing. The seller's only going to tell you what they remember, right? Usually the seller's property disclosure really doesn't become anything until somebody wants to sue somebody after closing. As far as the seller, how do I handle it? I tell them you need to fill this out. I don't give them an option, by the way. My flippers try and tell me that they don't need to fill out a property disclosure because they never lived in the house. I call foul. And I'll tell you why. Who just gutted the whole house? Who just put in brand new appliances? Who just replaced all the electrical? Who just replaced the septic system? And you're telling me you don't know anything? You're full of garbage. And depending on my flipper, I might use a different word there. Okay. So I tell them you need to fill this out. You need to fill it out with what you know. It doesn't say, I guarantee anything. It just says, this is what I know. And I get really frustrated, even, and the flippers drive me crazy, but even sometimes kids, right? Oh, cool. Go get your building done. I love it. Good luck, Deanna. You know, we go with the, how are we doing on time? It's only 10 o'clock. You don't know what you don't know. I remember I was doing a house in Wheat Ridge, and my client was a very nervous Nellie. She's also a very good friend of mine. And we sat, she had a very not nice name for that form. And we sat down together and I said, do you know the answer to this? And she goes, no. I said, well, then leave it blank. You don't know what you don't know. So then we got it all done. We were under contract and we were cruising along, and her husband says, now he did not live at the property. He lived in Glenwood Springs. He grew up across the street. And he says, hey, I was talking to such and such a neighbor the other day, and they were telling me that there used to be a well on your property and that they filled it in and it's no longer active. She freaked out. Because I didn't put that on that paper and I don't even know where it was. And I don't know. And I said, well, then how can you put in what you don't know? And what your husband's talking about, how do we know that the neighbor is remembering something from 30 years ago accurately? You don't know what you don't know. Right? So with my sellers, that's a big one, is that tell what you know. Now, when I look it over and I know that they just remodeled the kitchen and they brought all new appliances in the last 6 months and they don't put the age of the appliances on, I'm going to make them redo it. Right? Didn't you just replace all the appliances? Yeah. Go back. I'm going to send you a new one. Go back in and put in when you bought those appliances. Okay. Did that help?
Yes. And do you put the year or like 2014, or do you put whatever that would be, 9 years old? Do you put 9?
I think you can do either one. I can't remember because they constantly are changing that form.
Mhm.
So you could put age and you could put less than a year, or you could put purchased in 2022. Like,
Okay.
it's a pretty free text. It's I don't like to give a lot of direction because then I'm dictating and telling them what to do. And that is the number one form that I'm not supposed to do anything with.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
Concessions. Let's say that you've got repairs on the house. And let's be honest. Okay, so who do I have left here? Okay, so well, we'll just see. So if the seller is asked to make repairs and have somebody do it, is he going to find the best or the cheapest?
The
do you
cheapest
think?
person he can.
He's going to find the cheapest person he can, right?
And if it's him,
Is
they
that-
will.
And, you know, Jim Carroll has a saying. What's good ain't cheap, and what's cheap's typically not good. Okay. Now, there are certain things that you want the seller to address because you can't see and you don't know. Sewer line is my favorite one. I don't know until I get a clean scope what that repair is going to look like. There are certain things, depending on what they are, the lenders are going to require to be repaired prior to closing. If the roof has a hole in it, it's going to need to be addressed. Right? If you have an FHA loan or VA loan, you may have things that need to have the seller repair them. However, when I'm on the buy side, I would rather get money and let my buyer do it after closing. Why would I do that?
So they can pick their best person that they want.
Exactly. They get to pick their contractors. And is it easier for you to hold the contractor you hired accountable, or the contractor that the other party had held accountable? The one that you hire, right? You're going to be involved. And I will tell you, oftentimes the sellers will pay more for the convenience of not having to deal with it. Has anybody moved recently? None of you? Well, let me tell you, I did it a year ago and I moved a lot. Mara's known me probably the longest of everybody here. And I think in the time that Mara has known me, I've moved 3 times. Probably. And oh, by the way, the house that I have on the market right now, if I wouldn't have bought this house a year ago, it would have never hit the market. I would have bought it. Anyway, it's a pain to move, right? You got so much going on, you're under stress, and then boom, I'm the seller, and somebody has the balls to ask me to bring an electrician out to replace the GFCI. I just don't want to do it. Following where I'm going with this? Ask for money. Get quotes. You have time in the process to get the quotes. And you got to work with your lenders, right? You got to know how much concessions that you can give, that they can get, but you can reduce the amount of money that your buyer brings to the closing table. And then your buyer can deal with it later. A true story. Jose, my good friend and client, Jose, we've bought several houses. We went to this one and it was really in good shape. And I'm sitting there going, well, Jose, that was a good inspection. I think we're done. And he goes, I want $1,500 from the seller. And I was like, what do you want $1,500 for? And there were a few little ticky-tacky things. So I had to get very creative in how I wrote the inspection objection. Remember, you don't always give the full report, and this was the reason why. So I wrote out these things, and they gave us the $1,500 in concession because it was easier for the seller to give us $1,500 than it was to go and get it repaired. By the way, I'm willing to bet he's not done any of those things. But radon is a classic one, right? You can probably get $1,500 out of a seller for a radon mitigation system that'll cost you $1,100 to install. Following me? So in your objections, when you're writing, God, only like everybody walked away from the cameras. Megan, it's just you and me. Oh, there's Diane. Well, look, Mara left. Maria's gone. Christina's cutting hair off screen, right? Like everybody
a new
just left.
agent with us
Oh, hi,
too.
puppy.
So
I have mine. She's sleeping right here. When you do concessions on an objection, I just copy the line out of the contract to buy and sell that just says seller to provide buyer X amount of dollars of seller concessions at closing. Just put that amount in there. Just say seller to provide buyer $2,500 in concessions at closing for in lieu of repairs for the following items. And then you just start hitting them. Radon mitigation system, roof repairs, leaky faucets, boom, boom, boom. That is the one time. Remember I told you not to worry about those GFCIs because they were only a couple $100. Load them up if you're asking for concessions. It's all a strategy. Because who do you work for? Okay. All right. Now the seller. Whew. All right, we're doing all right. The seller, you get the objection as the seller's agent. And I do this, I'll be honest. Sometimes I get mad. I'll get an inspection objection and I'll go, are you kidding me? Please don't send it to your seller right after that emotion. Please, because they will pick up on your emotion. Okay. If you get that inspection objection at 5 o'clock and it makes you so mad that you can't see straight, then call your seller tomorrow morning. And if the seller is texting you going, hey, did we get the objection? Say, I got it. I need to look at it. I want to wrap my head around some of the things they're requested. I'll shoot it over to you in the morning and we'll talk. If you need to calm yourself down, find a stall. Okay? Because your seller will pick up on your emotion. And I'm not going to tell you that every buyer's agent is as trained as you guys are on how to think through this with your buyers. You're going to get the request to caulk the bathtub and you're going to say, are you kidding me? Okay. So you get it. You've reviewed it. You might actually even call the buyer's agent and get some clarifying information. What does this mean? I'm not following it. Okay. You get to your sellers. And this is where you got to know your client if you're on the listing side. Do they want you to just shoot it over an email and then they're going to read it and react? Are you going to do it by Zoom and go over it with them line by line before you even give it to them? Know your seller with what you got and figure out the best way to communicate it, because there's no one perfect way. And again, I'll say to the seller, we don't have to do any of it. We can do part of it. Let's look through and see what makes sense. And just because the buyer's agent and the buyer asked for $2,500 in concessions, we can say, we're not giving you the $2,500. You're a licensed contractor and you can fix these things yourself. It's all a negotiation. Okay. So then I will go through the items with the seller. And then I'll say, how do you want to address these? And if I've got the seller that says, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get this all done. And I am stressed out to the max and blah, 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 blah. I'll say, you know what, Maria, here's the good news. We don't have to do any of it. We can offer to just give them some money at closing and then they can deal with it. So Maria, who's like, I need every dime out of the property, suddenly became, oh my God, could we? Remember that person who's like, I'm not fixing anything and I want every dime and blah, 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 blah. And then she gets a bunch of reasonable stuff brought at her and she's going, oh, it'd be so much easier to just give him $2,500 and make it go away. If there's a sewer line break, be prepared with your vendors. Megan, I've got a copy of the sewer scope. Now I will give my buyers agents, send your sewer scopes because they're going to want to look at it. Got a copy of the sewer line report. I've already sent it over to my sewer line guy. See what I did as a listing agent? I already sent it to my guy. He confirms what's in here. He's estimating it's going to cost you about this much money to repair it. And Mike is usually cheaper than anybody else in town. And that was a sidebar to you guys, right? So again, right? Having those people that you trust to help your client through these tough times. Because usually if you can get them through inspection, you'll make it to the closing table. So the buyer asked for a laundry list of items. Seller says, I will do this, I'll do this, and I'll give him $1,500 and I'm done. You guys, pick up the phone. I know for some of you, the only thing the phone is good for is social media and texting. And I just lost somebody. Okay. So here's the deal. Conversations are the fastest way to a resolution. How many of you are married or are in a relationship with someone or have a friend that you value very much? Every single one of you. Do you always get along 100% with that individual? No. No. So the best way to solve a problem with you and someone that you love very much is just sending them a text message. No, you guys are all laughing. I can see you, right? You're laughing at me going, no, Margaret, I would never send a text message to my partner because they can't hear my voice. They can't hear my compassion. They can't hear that the tonality that I'm using isn't what they're reading. Is that not true? You would never fix a fight with your spouse in text. You would do what? Come on, somebody tell me.
Call them.
You would talk to them, right? You would say voice to voice, right? Because you could hear my tonality going, I can't believe you were such a jerk. I can't believe you think that was okay. I was really surprised you felt that way. Wow, boy, does that sound different. But in text, they can't hear that. Trust me, 800-mile relationship, text doesn't work when you're getting in a fight. Not a fight, a quabble on your birthday. Yes, Diane, it happened. You guys, the buyer's agents are the same way. Buyer's agents, the seller's agents are the same way. If you are negotiating something, pick up the doggone phone. Hey, Megan, this is Margaret. I reviewed that inspection objection with the seller. Here's kind of what they're thinking, and I just wanted to bounce this past you before I drafted it up. They are absolutely willing to take care of the sewer line repairs. As a matter of fact, they've already got that scheduled to happen. The other things, the electrician, that leaky faucet, and that radon mitigation system, you know, they were wondering if we gave your client a $2,000 concession at closing, if they take care of the sewer line, would that work for your client? And she says, well, they were super, super, super concerned about the water leak. I love the fact you're already on the sewer line. If they'll fix the water leak, how about if we did a $1,200 concession for the radon system? Okay, did you just see how we worked through that? But if all you do as the listing agent is go, boom, you're not working together. Make sense? Boy, that's going to come out good on the video where I'm pounding on my keyboard, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Right? Work through it, because the buyer's agent or the seller's agent on the other side is what?
You're
The enemy?
no. You're
They're not?
Everybody wants this to work.
You and the agent on the other side have one goal in common: to get your client to the closing line, to the finish line, and everybody feels good. That nobody feels like they've been taken advantage of. All right, Diane, show that quilt off. We just caught a glimmer of it.
Okay, give me just a second.
She was
I gotta
flipping
move.
it around and I saw the pattern on it. While she's
Yeah.
getting that ready, right? The agent on the other side, you guys have the same goal, right? So you want to have a relationship with them. You don't want it to be adversarial. You want it to be a partnership. Ooh, that's pretty. I would have liked to have snuggled up in that yesterday.
Yeah. Would have been nice.
instead of hosting a broker open in the snow rain mix.
Well, how was
Anyway.
turnout on it?
Huh?
How was turnout?
It was good. We had probably
Cool.
5 or 6 neighbor groups come through.
Oh, cool.
And then we had 3 agents show up. So only the agents drank the sangria. The neighbors all just ate the food, and they all ate the sweet food.
I was
So
planning on
Andy's
coming to that.
Andy's
Oh.
beautiful charcuterie board is still there. So we'll have the beautiful charcuterie board today at the open house from 12 to 2 if anybody needs a snack.
I just have a quick question, just to
Sure.
clarify. So concessions, is the concessions, does that mean like that's what everything that the buyer wants done, or is it just is that just the term used for like when the buyer is just asking for money to repair it themselves?
In the terminology that I was using, it was money in lieu of repairs.
Okay.
And it can include all of the repairs or a portion of the repairs.
Okay.
So depending on what the laundry list is of things that need to be worked through, you might have part of it where the seller does the work and part of it where they give the buyer money. You could
Okay.
have another situation where they just do money. If you're dealing with a cash transaction, then it no longer is seller concessions because there are no closing costs when it's cash, right? So
Mhm.
then it's a price reduction.
Thank you.
Okay. Good question. All right, what other questions do we have? What am I missing? What did I not tell you?
Not having been through the process, I can't come up with any other than the ones you give us, but I will say this is, like you said, one of the most important pieces of the entire transaction, because this is really what sets up the remainder of the transaction. So if I'm remembering correctly, the appraisal is generally after the inspection. Is that correct?
Usually, although every once in a while you'll have an appraiser that gets out there before the inspection. So that's where if you're on the buy side, you got to really work closely with your lender and watch out for your client's money. Now, you probably have a pretty good idea just from previewing the home in the offer process. You know, if it's a newer home, like if you all were going to come buy my 3-year-old townhome, there's probably not anything in here that they're going to find that's a deal killer.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm probably not going to really worry about when the appraiser's coming out.
Okay.
However, if I'm working in a 1959 home and I'm seeing cracks in the basement walls or the outside foundation, and it doesn't look like it's been very well taken care of, I might get my inspector out there quick and tell the loan officer, let's pump the brakes on ordering the appraisal until we at least do the inspection. Good question.
Yeah.
One of my favorite questions when I'm going with my buyer and we're going through the laundry list of things, I will say to them, Mara, is there anything on this list that if the seller said no, you would terminate this contract? The reason I ask that question is if she says, no, we'll figure it out, then I can let the lender get the appraiser out there as fast as possible, right? But if Mara says, well, if they're not willing to make sure that we get that sewer line addressed or we don't get that structure stuff that's happening there fixed, I might not want this house, then I'm going to tell my loan officer, let's hold the appraisal until we get through resolution. Because why would I spend $700 to $1,000 of my client's money on an appraisal on a transaction that might terminate? So I love that line. Is there anything that you heard today that if the seller says no, you would decide not to buy this house? It's a great qualifying question to ask your buyers. And it also sets the stage for your buyer. When the seller pushes back on some of the things, you can go back and say, well, Mara, you told me there were no deal killers here. What changed? If you have the buyer who does want to suddenly kill the deal over something and they've gotten the appraisal, I start asking them, okay, Mara, I know that GFCI is super important to you, but here's the deal. You've just spent almost $1,000 on inspections. You've spent almost another $700 or $800 on the appraisal that already happened. So you're $2,000 into this house. If we walk away and go find another house, you're going to have another $2,000 in that house. Let's get my electrician out here. Let's find out for sure how much this GFCI is, but I gotta believe it's going to be a whole lot less than another $2,000. Now, I use that one as an extreme because I told you guys GFCIs are usually pretty inexpensive, right? You got to sometimes take the emotion out, because now Mara's just emotional. That damn seller, he won't fix that electrical socket, and that just makes me so mad. He could keep his dang house. And we are drama free, right? It's our job to reset Mara. It's our job to say to Mara, I understand why that's frustrating. I know that that was super important to you. But remember, when we wrote the objection, you said there wasn't anything in there that was walk away. Let's talk about what you've invested in to buy this house. And that's just money you just threw away. Is it easier to take on a $200 expense for after closing or spend another $2,000 on a new house? And start the process all over again when the market has already gone up 8%. So you're going to pay more for the same house today than you would have when we booked this one under contract. You would think Mara really just got emotional with me because I just told you guys exactly how I would have handled it, didn't I? I gave you my conversation. But it has to be, I cannot be emotional. Now, what I really want to do is go, Mara, what are you thinking? You are such a ding dong. You are not, I want to lecture her, right? I want to tell her she's being a big dum dum. It's not what she hired me to do. She hired me to tell her she's a big dum dum in a logical way and to keep her refocused on the prize. Make sense? I love it when there's people on the phone that I know really, really well and I can give them a hard time and they know that I love them. Just wait, Megan, when I get to know you a little bit better, you'll be the one I'll be shaking someday. These other ones know me pretty well. So anyway, all right. That's my advice on inspections. Make sure that as a buyer's agent, you're following up to get the paid receipts. Make sure as a listing agent, you're getting the paid receipts and providing them to the buyer's agent. If you're doing seller concessions in the resolution, make sure that the concession, the work that the seller is going to do goes into the inspection resolution. The concession goes on an amend extend. Because the concession has to be taken into account by the lender and the title company when they balance out the numbers. Okay.
And your title company needs that documentation, or your
Yep.
transaction coordinator, who
Exactly.
I recently did one, and by the time I hung up the phone, the transaction coordinator had already sent it to title, and she had already adjusted the settlement statement, and I was like, woohoo, team.
Right. Love those TCs, especially yours. Just to be clear, Mara's transaction coordinator happens to be my daughter. Anyway, thought I would just verify that. But she is a pretty good one. Because you know that her mom has pretty high standards, and if she wasn't meeting them, I'd fire her. So it works pretty well. All right, love it. What else you got? Was this worth a Saturday morning for an hour and 40 minutes?
Of course.
Yes, thank you, Margaret.
Yes.
You are, yay. Tell your friends. Right? Who else do you know who's in a coaching program that could have found value today?
Oh, lots.
Okay. So we need your help. So now I'm coming to you as a coach. We need your help. We put a lot of time into this and we think we bring value. But when no one shows up, we start to question our value. Okay. So get your people here, get your friends here, go, oh my goodness, I can't wait to see the Facebook post later, at least one. Man, dual career coaching today was so valuable. I learned so much from Margaret. Okay. If you felt that way, spread the word. Okay. Lots of people could be here. So anyway, what else? I got a ton going on and I have an open house too. So I don't mind ending early, and I want to make sure that I'm always helping you guys to the maximum of my ability. So open end, what's your question? It does not have to be about inspections.
Have you ever used an ISA? And what are your thoughts about hiring an admin that's an ISA?
Okay. No, I have not ever hired an ISA.
Okay.
I have considered it. I think they're valuable, but if you were to study the organizational model of the MREA, that is not your first hire.
No, it is not the first hire, but there's been so much discussion on how to appropriately groom. There was a discussion the other day in the meeting, and I found it kind of weird because yes, if you look at the growth chart out of the MREA, that is way down the line. So I found the comment interesting, I guess is what I can say.
So knowing where all of your businesses are, you're not there.
No,
Because most ISAs are salary based plus a commission on a closing.
yeah.
So no, I have not used one. We have talked about putting one in. I've looked at them for a couple of different purposes. I've looked at them for the perspective of, circle prospecting around certain things for Margaret Gate Homes. But I still have to develop the lead.
Yeah.
Because your ISA, depending on how you have them trained, isn't going to go out and do the appointments with you or for you, right?
Nope. Nope.
And you got to have them super well trained to qualify the leads. You yourself. So first of all, I would never hire a virtual assistant to do my ISA work. They need to be trained by me and how I want it done and how my processes are and what I've learned. So until I'm able to do the work, if I'm not able to train someone else how to do it, I'm not ready to do it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So first of all, you got to build the scripts and the role play and all of those types of things for them to do what you want them to do.
Yep.
Yes, there are classes they can take to improve their skills. But at the end of the day, I might teach an ISA one way and you're going to teach them another way.
Right.
So would I say that ISAs are a big no? No, because I think they're valuable as an individual agent or a small team like I am. And that's what I have. For those of you that don't know me, I have a very small team. We have 2 licenses on the team, and then we've got a very part-time admin, and then we pay Andy as a TC. So that's what we do. And we're going to do probably close to 20 million this year in volume with just that small of a group. I think it also depends on what you want the ISA to do for you. And are you asking them to do things you won't do? Maybe. Right? So there's a lot to think about. The admin being the ISA. Well,
I just,
it depends on if your ISAs are licensed or not.
yeah.
Because I don't think your admins should be. And that's coming direct from Damien, because all of a sudden your admin support doesn't know what role they're playing and what hat they're playing.
Yeah.
So I would say it's best, the ISA model is a good one if you are looking to build a team. As an individual agent, I think there are other ways to build your business, get leverage that's a lot cheaper and a lot more effective.
I just thought it was a really interesting conversation, given the flow that's in the MREA. Which the other question is, has anybody heard of MREA 2?
Yes. I've been hearing about MREA 2 for, I don't know, 7 years. So Gary wrote the original MREA, what, how many years ago? A few.
2003.
2003. Okay. So, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Overall, it's still there.
Yeah.
The role of the ISA developed after Gary wrote that. And there's been, obviously, the world has changed and how we work has changed. So are there certain things in the MREA that have been tweaked? Absolutely. But not enough to completely rewrite the book. And I think that's, Gary went down the path of rewriting the MREA 2. And when they went out and interviewed agents, not just in Keller Williams, but also in other brokerages, the top millionaire agents were still all doing the same thing they did in 2003. So
And the reason I bring that up is every time Gene mentioned MREA, he said the MREA 2 has this change in it, and the MREA 2 has that change in it. And I'm like, I'm a little confused by this whole MREA 2, because of course I'm digging, making sure there wasn't a release that I didn't understand,
Right.
but
it's the rewrite of the version. So if you look at like the business planning clinic, Diane.
yep.
So when I teach that, the percentages used to be different.
Yeah.
The conversion
can
rates
see
used
that.
to be different. The expense percentage allocations used to be different than what they are today. So there are
Mhm.
places in the business that, as a result of the research that Gary and Jay have been doing to rewrite the book, they are bringing that down to us in leadership to say, teach them this now, right?
Okay.
Rewrite this section. So all Gene is doing is saying, I'm giving you the most current data versus what we
Okay.
originally believed 20 years ago. So don't get too hung up on you missed the MREA 2. Just keep reading the MREA and you'll be fine.
Thank
And
you.
the ISA is a big piece of that. To answer your question, the right place to hire an ISA is probably when your admin team is pretty well built out.
Yeah.
The agents,
Okay.
there are agents, the #1 agent in Colorado last year for individual units closed 130 units as an individual agent. She did not have an ISA, but she's got one heck of an admin team. She's got multiple transaction coordinators. She's got an executive assistant who manages all the admin people. She's got a marketing person under admin who takes care of all their listing paperwork. Like she's got people who do all that administrative stuff, including a stager. She doesn't even stage her own houses, Mara. She just hires somebody and she's got someone on staff and they go do it. All of you are too new for that. None of you have the budget and the cash flow in your businesses to be able to afford any of those things. So what you do is you don't put people on staff where you're paying a salary when you don't have any income. You hire people to do things on a project basis, right? You guys, I believe, all know Bob, right? Bob runs a really big business. Does he have anybody on his team? The answer is no. Bob's a solo guy. He does not even have an admin. But he's got a transaction coordinator. He's got a stager. He's got a photographer. Now, there's probably some stuff that Bob could leverage and he does it, and that's okay. Right? But I wouldn't focus real heavy on the people part of your world right now. for
I
any of you,
really-
and I know all of your businesses.
I really wasn't thinking about me. It was just a curious
Mhm.
concept, given what I've been reading. So no, I'm not considering hiring anybody. I'm still getting going. So,
Yep. But here's the thing, Diana, and that's why I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole, is it's very easy for a new agent as you're trying to figure out how to find business and how to build your business and get that consistency in your business. It's very easy to go to a class like Gene's, right? Who's somebody who runs a very big team, and he teaches MREA, which is $1 million net, and none of you are there yet, right? He's teaching you the model that you're going to grow into. So the fact that he's talking about these bigger picture things is awesome, as long as we all don't think we need to go out and buy them all today. All right, what else? We got 12 minutes.
none here.
Going once. Going twice. Oh, wait, I got to take my picture. Hold on a minute.
Picture.
I got to take attendance.
Your picture.
And I should have done it when the other people were on the phone, because now I'll forget who all was here.
In Zoom, there is a little link for the saved meeting that will give you that data.
Oh, sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. So, all righty. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this morning. It was fun. I hope it was valuable. Okay, who else was here? Casey was here. Maria was here. Who else was here? Is that it? No, Deanna was
Oh.
here.
Yep. Dan.
As long as I don't throw this box down away before I finish my attendance, I'll be good. All right, you guys, have an awesome week. Let me know what I can do to help you guys. For those of you that are also part of my Monday coaching and you just popped on here because you thought it would be interesting, I'm glad you did. But Monday we're doing combined group, because we got the regional rally at 11. We got some awesome stuff happening at 10 o'clock. Make sure you're there in person or on Zoom. I don't care, but we got some killer stuff coming. So I'm excited about it. So anyway, I will see you all. Have a great weekend. Go make some new friends this weekend.
Thank you. Go sell
Bye.
that beautiful house.
Well, come bring me a buyer, girl.
Okay.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.